What is going on, ladies and gents? Electric Type 88? No, just kidding, guys. It's Addicted Me, DJ. Today, it is the first of hopefully many collaborations with Electric Type 88. Today, we're going to be discussing modern Pokemon investing versus vintage Pokemon card investing. A big question to tackle, I know. Plenty of things to say. I don't want to say the same things as Electric Type 88. And I also don't want to skip on a lot of things. So hopefully you guys don't get bored with this video because, you know, if you come here and then you watch my stuff and then you watch his, then it's like, they said the same thing. So I'm going to try to mention some points that he didn't say just to keep things a bit more entertaining for you guys. And guys, if you do like this kind of content, I do a lot of investment kind of videos, pack openings, and giveaways. So feel free to join my channel, subscribe, give me a like, blah, blah, blah. Cue that intro. Let's get this going. All right, guys, so just real quick, we're not going to talk about modern versus vintage in regards to which one is better, which one's the best investment. But I think they're both great investments that you can make, that anyone can make if you're starting off or if you've done this for a while. Fellow Pokemon collector and investor, Electric Type 88. We've both been doing this for quite some time, so that's why we like to share our knowledge and hopefully you guys can get something out of it. Now, pretty much both investments, modern and vintage, can be both very good for anybody. Now, I think we should discuss investments in a general term because I think people talk about investments just willy-nilly these days. They're just like, oh, let's invest in Pokemon. Ooh, invest in this. But what is investment? What are people looking for in investments? And what are the pros and cons of investing with modern against vintage or vice versa? So generally, guys, the basic form of investments or what you need to do with investments is putting time, effort, and money into something or someone with the hopes of that something or someone growing in value, growing a profit, increasing worth. Yeah, that's just the general sense of investing. And when it comes to Pokemon, it's more of a hobby, but you can invest in it. So that's why people don't really take into account the whole time and effort thing because they're happy to do it because it is a hobby, they enjoy it. So when we're talking about Pokemon investing, we're mainly thinking about the money side of things, right? And when people think of a good investment versus a bad investment, you're thinking a good investment is something that grows exponentially in growth. So like, you know, buying a base set pack back in the day for $5 and now it's worth $100 to $200, for example. That's huge growth over time. So that's what you consider a great investment. But if you buy something, let's say another pack for $5 and in 10 years time it is still $5, you wouldn't consider that as a great investment. Maybe a good collector's piece, but not an investment. So slightly different, but that's how we define investment, or that's how we look at investments these days. We're looking more at the values of money with what you purchase and the growth rate. So we're gonna talk all about that with modern versus vintage. So I have said this before in past videos and stuff, but I think both are equally great investments that anybody can make. They both have their benefits and disadvantages. So let's start with one of the things to discuss, which is entry point. So how easy is it to enter into vintage and how easy is it to enter into modern? Vintage is definitely harder than modern in regards to entering that path. Reason being is because prices have been crazy, and also for modern as well, but it's becoming less affordable to buy vintage products or vintage cards, vintage sealed items, you know it. Just all vintage stuff has jumped up hugely in price and it's very hard to enter that. Like the entry point is a little difficult, especially for people who don't have enough capital, which is key in investing. When you don't have capital, how can you buy anything to invest in? Whereas modern products has a very easy entry point. A lot of people, anybody can really get into it. You can buy packs and just keep it sealed. You can buy booster boxes under 200 Australian dollars. Obviously different currencies in all over the world, you know, with England you use pounds, so maybe under $100 you can get a booster box for modern, whereas, you know, with vintage you're looking at thousands of dollars, which a lot of us cannot afford. This is a hobby with a lot of young people who probably don't have that much money or not very great at savings, so it can be difficult. So guys, in saying that vintage is a lot more expensive doesn't mean it has no other room to grow. Like, the prices are still rising, even though the prices are already at a pretty high point. But I think with modern, they still haven't reached their full potential. Like, there's cards in modern right now which you can buy pretty cheap and has potential to continue to grow just quickly. So because with vintage, it's taken 20 years for it to really grow to where it's at right now, and modern's only been around for, it depends what you classify as modern, but like you're thinking maybe Sun and Moon, maybe a bit of XY, and obviously Sword and Shield. Those prices are still, you know, under $100 value cards or sealed product, but give it time, and you know, the entry point, like I said before, it's very easy to get into. If you have a lot of capital, probably vintage is a good way to go, because it's still growing. But I think with modern, it just hasn't really seen its full potential yet. There is huge demand for vintage. There's huge demand for modern as well. But what sells easier? A base set Charizard or shiny Charizard GX? Both Charizards, both popular chase cards. If you had the money to afford both, what would you buy? You'd probably buy the base set Charizard, in like all honesty. Like, even though both cards are great, maybe PSA 10 shiny Zard versus PSA 7 Charizard from base set, some people would prefer the base set, even with a lower grade. But that's just, you know, the record, like I don't know. The prices for a PSA 7 base Zard and the price for a PSA 10 shiny Zard are roughly the same, but people would still choose the PSA 7 base Zard purely based off nostalgia. I guess it depends what crowd you're looking on. If you're asking a 30-year-old, they're probably going to go with the base set. If you're asking for one of the people who are growing up with Hidden Fates, maybe 15-year-olds, 12-year-olds, people who are watching YouTube and seeing these openings, they're probably more concerned about the Hidden Fates thing, and they'd be like, boom, I'd get the Zard. So I guess it really depends who you ask. And that's why this is all really opinion-based. I don't think there's a really right or wrong answer in regards to modern versus vintage, which one is better. I think they both have pros and both have cons, but you can invest in both. There is room to grow for both. If you're just purely thinking about investing, like you're gonna make money with both of them. So it just depends how you go about it. For me, I feel that vintage is a lot easier to move as a product. Especially with sealed items, a lot of people demand it, so it's easy to sell. I had some products from vintage, and if I post them up on Facebook groups or eBay, they just get snapped up like real quick. Whereas with modern, I have some products that I've listed and it's just not going as fast. It still sells, but with investments, you kind of want to have something a little liquid. None of it's really truly liquid because it's not, you know, boom, like stocks where you buy stocks and then you sell it. When you sell it, you get the money straight away. Whereas even with a base set Zard, if nobody has money to pay for it, even though it's worth $2,000, $3,000, you won't be able to sell it if no one has the money to pay for it. And that's just how collectibles works, guys. Like, if you have certain cards, even though they're worth a lot of money or they're really good cards, if nobody wants it at the time or nobody has the money, it's not exactly you can instantly sell it and get the money straight away. With vintage, I feel like that has more of a pool. It's easier to sell vintage, easier to get the money quicker compared to modern. I guess it really depends what modern product you have, but I'm telling you now, I've had both products and it's just so much easier to sell vintage. So I think that's a pro for vintage. in regards to investing, because you want things to sell, because these are investments, right? You want things to grow, but not only grow, something that you can easily move, something that's pretty popular, people know. I know there's cards out there that are really expensive, but you put that on the market, you won't really get many people wanting to get it. It's just demand, just kind of like with Charizard. I know I use him a lot, but that's what a lot of people invest in, right? Base set Charizard, no matter the grade, PSA 5s to 10 or whatever the grade is, always sells. It's one of the biggest sellers things on eBay. It's just an easy sell. You put it up, boom, like someone will buy it. Like there's always plenty on eBay and plenty of people buying it. Whereas, trying to think of an example, you could have too many examples, I guess. You can even have like a first edition, lost. You could have a really rare card from one of the modern sets, a gold or rainbow card, one of the chase cards in today's sets, besides the shiny Zard, and vintage will pretty much outsell that anytime, even though they are similarly priced or it's got a lower grade. I feel vintage just moves a lot smoother, a lot quicker. Not saying that modern doesn't move at all. There's still obviously great investment there and you can sell it. It just takes a little bit more time to sell. They haven't matured in time yet and it's kind of hard to tell. And people don't really trust that, when things have only been out for 2 years, 1 year, compared to the vintage stuff. They've been around for 20 years and they've got a steady growth rate and people are wanting them. Not to say that people don't want modern, but it's just easy to sell. So those are 2 points so far. Just to recap real quick, entry point, hard for vintage, easy for modern, whereas with the growth rate or just in terms of liquidity, how easy it is to sell things and how fast they grow, I think both modern and vintage grow pretty quick. Modern is underestimated, I believe. There's a lot of modern sets that have doubled in price in under a year. Even WOTC sets didn't do that. It took them like 10, 12 years for them to actually double in price or grow, because at the time there was not much demand. But we're seeing the growth now, and that's why people see it as one of the best investments to make. But obviously there's still room to grow for modern. With vintage, it's experienced, right? It's seasoned, so it's easy to sell, a lot easy to move, whereas modern could be a little slower to move. You can still move it if you have decent cards or decent sealed product. But against vintage, I think vintage kind of quickly sells them out, especially with sealed or even just PSA chase cards from old school sets. All right, guys, the final point, the biggest one of all, is what everyone attacks. All these WOTC lovers, they attack the modern sets with print run and, just how much of it is there. Supply, there's so many modern cards, we don't know the print run. But let's be honest, we don't know the print run for vintage either. I think that's partially why people are in a rush to get vintage, because nobody knows how much there is and everyone wants to get on it before it runs out. The question is, will it ever run out? I don't know, because people are opening and there's a lot of people that aren't. They're keeping that sealed, so yeah. Nobody truly knows how much product is out there for either or, right? They just say modern, there's a huge print run because they see it on the market, it's everywhere, it looks like there's a huge supply. And the thing is that matches with the supply is obviously demand. Very, something that a lot of people preach on is supply versus demand. And I've said it in my last video, if you missed that out on the booster boxes, the modern booster box, not the best, but like a very easy, simple investment to make in regards to modern would be a booster box. And I did mention, even if supply is huge, there's tons of Charizards out there, people still want them. It doesn't matter. There could be 1,000, there could be 10,000. These are set cards. There's always duplicates. Even with WOTC, there's duplicates of those cards, right? But That's what people say, oh, modern, printed to the ground. It's not a good idea to invest because there's so much supply. But the thing is, if there's always the demand to counter that supply, then what does it really matter, right? Like, if there's more demand than the supply, then generally speaking, the prices will either grow or stay the same. We're not really going to see that drop unless everybody's selling that particular card at dirt cheap, right? And, you know, obviously everyone floods the market with their Charizards or whatever, and boom, 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 it's all gone. Chances of that happening, I don't really see it, right? In regards to market value and sold listings, they differ every time. So, you know, when people talk about, let's say they see a Charizard or a Blastoise. Let's use Blastoise, for example. I'm sick of Charizard now. Let's say someone puts a Blastoise for $1,000, or, you know, you're looking to sell your Blastoise from base set, and you look at sold listings. They say the last one sold for 500, and then you look up on the, you know, everyone else that's selling it right now. Everyone's selling it for 1,000. So you're not going to price it at 500. Why would you do that? Like, everyone else is selling for 1,000. Why don't you try to make that 1,000? If you put it at 500, it's going to be snapped up straight away, and that's something you could have lost. I don't think people would do that. You know, I think people are smart enough to see, well, look, sold listings say 500, but everyone, you can't find anyone selling it for 500. Everyone else is listing at 1,000. So that whole thing about people undercutting each other, I think people still want to capitalize on their cards. So if they see 3 people listing at 1,000, chances are you're going to list yours at 1,000 too. Like, I would do that. I wouldn't list mine at 500 because you're losing money there. And once one of those Blastoise sells for 1,000 or the best offer 900 or something, that's like the new sold listing price, 900. So it's still rising in value. Even if everyone's chucked in their Blastoises, if everyone looked at the market and everyone's priced it at a certain point, why would you, you know, charge less? It's just like the fast food chains. Most of them do like a burger, chips, and drink for $10. There's how many burger chains out there? Like McDonald's, KFC, Red Rooster, Hungry Jack's. They're all charging roughly same prices. They, you know, sometimes put a $2 deal or a really cheap deal, but, you know, they all fluctuate at the same price because that's just the standard price. If McDonald's, you know, decided to charge people $5 a burger instead of $10 where everyone else is charging 10, everyone's going to go to McDonald's, but they're going to be losing a lot of money, right? Like, it's just not a smart move. You just go with the market. Don't really go with sold listings as much. Like, use a combination, but it's not entirely sold listings. I get that question a lot, so I thought I'd just chuck that in there. I think that influences a lot between the two. In regards to sold listings and the market value. So guys, just saying that even if the supply is huge or the print run is big for modern, it doesn't matter. The demand is still there. People still want it. People will still pay prices for it. Even if there's like 100, like I said, on the market, if they were all set at a certain price, I don't see people undercutting each other to the point where nobody's making a decent amount. Everyone's going to try to make as much money as they can. That's just the seller's mentality. So that's what I'm saying. Supply, yep, there's a lot of it. We don't know an exact number, and eventually that number is going to decrease every time someone opens it, and once they stop printing, because you know what? I've said this in my last video. They don't continue to print all the time, and they've actually changed a lot of the things now. That's why we're seeing some booster boxes go up in price. You know, Pokemon's printing less. I think we see it because we got a lot of social media back then. When WOTC era came out, we had social media, but not as much as we do today. So we see things everywhere. You know, Sword and Shield, Darkness Ablaze, all this stuff on web pages and stuff. But it's readily available. But there's going to come a point real quick where they're not printing anymore, and we're like, oh, they're not printing anymore. Kind of like with Hidden Fates. Hidden Fates just went like that. Like, I only was able to get 2 pin boxes when it first came out, and I wasn't able to get anything else after that for ages. you know, like they're actually getting a little bit smarter now with the print with modern, especially with now coming up. Even with when Sword and Shield came out, it was like just limited supply. I could probably still get one. I'd have to look, but it's a bit more effort than before. Back in the day, maybe even like 6 years ago, X and Y sets, they just kept printing. But they're even now slowly disappearing. I'm only nearly finishing getting my booster pack art sets for X and Y. So like it takes time. So doesn't matter about the supply for modern. I know that's a lot of people's attack on modern. They say go with vintage because, you know, there's a lot less of it, so the chances are the prices are going to keep rising. But same can be said with modern, really. I think, guys, as long as the demand meets the supply, or the demand is higher than the supply for modern, there's a lot more people coming into modern right now. If the demand meets it, we should be fine, guys. Like, even if there's heaps of print run, like nobody knows the print run for either or. So that's just my take on it. So I know a lot of people are going to say, you know, go with vintage because of the supply. But supply, demand, you got to think of the both, all right? Think of them both. All right, guys, so I think I could talk about this all day, but I don't want to make an hour-long video. Hopefully Electric Type 88 covers other points that I didn't. Leave your comments down below what you think of some of my suggestions or my points. Just to do a really quick recap, we talked about the supply of both. You know, we just don't know for either, right? The print run, nobody knows. We know it's disappearing. Supply is low for WOTC, and that's why those prices are up. But with modern, we just see a lot of it now because we're in that time right now. 20 years down, we don't know what it's going to look like. So just saying. Next, we also had the growth rate between the two. So, you know, with growth for WOTC, it took how many years for it to grow, whereas with modern, you know, we've seen sets double in price in under a year. We're seeing sets triple in price over 2-3 years. So they're both growing. We know that. Which one's growing faster or stronger? We know the prices for WOTC boxes or vintage stuff is really high right now. So entry point is really hard. So people are going into modern because entry point is easy. And when things are easy, a lot of people try to get into that that kind of investing. So just a quick summary, guys. I honestly, in my own opinion, I invest in both. I don't pick one or the other. You can. It's up to you guys. It's totally up to you. Some people are just totally into vintage. Some people are totally into modern. I don't think there's a right or wrong. Those are just my feelings, my points. I know Electric Type would definitely share some of his points, and you know, we get to see each other's. I haven't seen his video. I don't know what he's talking about, but hopefully we can share some light on the subject between vintage and modern. Both great investments. Choose wisely in regards to what you buy. You can go either or. I've definitely done sealed. I've done PSA. I've done raw. Like, it's all doable. All of them can technically rise in value. Some don't, but you know, you got to do your homework, do your research. Which one is the better buy? Which one has potential to grow? Definitely Darkness Ablaze. I see that. That's going to be a killer set. I reckon it's going to be very similar to Hidden Fates a little bit in regards to the Charizards in it and all that. So that's just my little thing. I'm going to probably invest a lot in that too. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. I don't pick any side. Vintage, modern, both great. Both have their pros and cons. See you guys later. 2 days time. Make sure you go check out Electric Type 88 and join my booster box giveaway. Bye.